It's with Steve Smith, and he is our director of editorial events, and he is going to be interviewing Eric Tsai, who is the VP of marketing at Joybird. So why don't we let the video tell you all about it. Ryan?
Back, really returning champion to our summits. He's the Eric Tsai is the VP of Marketing and Business Development at Joybird. That, for those of you who aren't familiar with Joybird, is a custom-made and curated furniture omnichannel retailer. Their primary presence is D2C online, but they also have showrooms in major cities in the US, so they truly are omnichannel. Eric has been doing digital marketing for almost 2 decades at more companies than I can name. He's got one of the longest LinkedIns I think I've ever seen when it comes to just individual companies he's worked at. But he has been with us a number of times. And one of the things that we focused on with Eric in the past is the ways in which they are focusing on customer experience. He's been gathering a lot of user interaction data and surveys about what customers want, how they want it online. Eric, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. We're all set. I'm going to turn it over to you because I want to launch you into this this topic of user experience, because I know it's central to what Joybird is doing, and you're thinking about it in omnichannel terms. And one of the ways that you grounded this whole idea of revising your user experience is with a lot of interactions with your users, both tracking their behaviors online, but talking to them. So I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us the project that you guys have been after.
Yeah, thank you for that intro, Steve. I appreciate that. So for Joybird, we sell furniture on the internet. So it's very difficult and very challenging for most everybody to understand, to comprehend what the furniture is actually going to look like when you get it, how it's going to feel, how it's going to fit. The part of the initiatives that our entire team focuses on is user experience, right? We want to be able to utilize our investments in marketing, technology, and people to collect information, valuable information that we can improve the user experience, because our entire team is so obsessed about improving customer experience all the time that, whatever little things we can do to improve it, we're going to try to do it. And obviously we want to do it in a confine of, data-driven approach. So, some of the ideas that we wanted to share here today is really around how we go about doing that and how we think about, incremental budgets and using it. So a lot of the times when we think about, growing the business, we don't just go to our leaders and say, give us more money, but we say, hey, we're getting this type of performance. Can we get more? And so some of the things we wanted to be able to do is to say, well, we want to get more so we can test and do better user experience. And some of the ways we, prove that is say, hey, when you have better user experience, here's some data, right? And there's some, NPS and related type of stuff we can do to create those type of alignments with different stakeholders. Essentially, we wanted to prove all this different type of vehicles that we can grow our business, not just one way, but in multiple ways, right? And so some of the ways we think about is improving the user experience through a virtual storefront, number one, right? And then improve our user experience through a chatbot integration, or improving a user experience through a free design services. So if you look at all these three, they're really about supporting and assisting a user going through their kind of a purchase journey. And so when we think about it is when you support somebody, you should see an improvement in conversion rate. That's it. Otherwise, you go to the store and people looked at, ask you, hey, would you like to get some help? And you say, I'm good, right? And those people usually are pretty good. And we have that, right? And we are getting a current run rate of business because of people doing that. And so in order to improve our business, we want to be able to kind of influence those KPIs a little bit through these type of means. And some of them are going to work. A lot of them are not going to work, right? But it's worth it to check them off and be able to come back later on and say, hey, maybe at that time, it was pre-COVID and people weren't accustomed to X, Y, and Z activity. But now things are different and we are actually seeing that. So let's get into it. So some of the ways that we talk about shopping experience, we're thinking about us as the kind of the guide, an advisor to the customer. So we don't think about us as the hero. We don't think about us being like the end all be all, but we think about how do we support the customer because we are in their, how does it feel like to be in their shoes? And they don't trust us. They don't believe in us because we're a brand that sells furniture and we want their money and they know that, right? So how do we get to the point where we can develop a deeper understanding? And so a lot of the marketing scheme, that we set up is really about building that relationship and trust through a 360 view of shopping experience. If you don't have a 360 view of your customer, it's very difficult to develop a user experience that really is going to pay off from an ROI perspective. So I really encourage everyone to really think about, like for example, on this slide on the right, it'll show you the shopping experience where users shop online, then buy online, right? Shop online, then buy in store, and then shop in store and buy online, and then shop. So there's these 4 combinations. And oftentimes what we found is when you have a physical store, right, those KPIs change significantly, and they have a lot more incremental customers. There's a lot more incremental opportunities to grow the business. And that's one of the reasons why, Joybird is also rapidly expanding, our retail presence right now. And so,
Eric, when you say 360 view, compare that to, say, translate that into marketing speak for me. What's the difference between a 360 view of the shopping experience and the customer journey?
The 360 view is to, like, when you're trying to understand the customer journey, I think one of the issues that, at least from our team, we challenge our teams a lot, thinking about things like this, is where there's so many different customer journeys, and you are trying to bucket 100,000 people that's going to buy from you into 3 things. Oftentimes it works. You may catch 70% of it, but a better way is to build almost like a kind of a sensory device, 360 view of your business, and say, what's coming in from all sides of the business? What's coming in? Where should I put my resources? Where should I emphasize on? Right? Once you have that, then you can connect the dots. Because oftentimes, if people go on online and they come to the store, or vice versa, if you don't have those tracking mechanisms, you're helping them at the wrong part of the sales cycle. Right? They could be towards the end, but you're telling them, talking to them like they're just beginning, and then vice versa as well. So it would be nice, they walk into the store, right? Somehow from a data perspective, that's why, like tracking with phone and devices and app works that way. Is it would be nice the users automatically gets recognized by the store associates. Oh, Steve was here just last week, right? He was looking at these 2 pillows and this chair right here. I better let him know this is low inventory, right? There are things like that people can do. Maybe that's a little bit too far out. But the idea is to have information with regards to, that person's lifestyle, as well as your business, as to what you have inventory wise, right? What you have, kind of accessories wise and product wise and service wise. All right.
Now I know that you got, one of the things that you've gotten a lot of traction from is your chat box, which is always a tricky thing. I've seen some execute well, some that feel like really bad robots. And you've been using chatbots in the Messenger app. What level and kind of interactions do your customers want in this context? And what do you learn from refining this channel about how tech can make it feel more personal and less robotic?
Yeah, I think, because of what we talked about right here, right? You can essentially build a very humanized experience through your entire customer journey. You just have to put up, kind of like the marketing strategy and say, okay, when we say, you can say a, thank you order confirmation, or you can write a really cool way of thanking the customer, right? There's different ways of operating in those capacities. So the way that we think about it is, well, chatbots and a lot of these technologies are very expensive to invest in right away, right? And so it's important that we get some traction. So we just want to get a little bit of information and said, okay, right now we don't have a lot of chatbots, like let's say before when we started. How do we insert this experience into the current setup, and then we can collect information to prove or disprove, right, our thesis and our hypothesis, right? And which is, hey, this is supposed to help customers buy more, right? Or shorten the sales cycle because they're getting help, right? And then the other thing is also, there is an element of like, some people prefer real human help. Some people don't want any human interaction at all, right? But then there is an element of human interaction within the automation. So there's many ways that we're trying to build a thesis around it, so that we understand, like, hey, does the entire customer journey requires chatbot, or just the beginning, or just the middle, or just when you have questions about certain things? So that's kind of like what we're trying to figure it out and try to build around the ideas around investing into chatbots. Hopefully,
do we have some illustration of what the chatbot looks like?
Oh yeah, so here's kind of like what we talked about in terms of the shopping experience, right? And then so let's talk about some of the experiences I just shared with you guys. So some of the experience we talk about, virtual store experience, are like 3D, right? Designing 3D, kind of like real estate apps. You can tour around the house, somebody's house, and you can see the furniture, how it looks like in somebody's home. Obviously, you have the AR stuff, which everybody has, and we have those apps as well. You can use your phone's camera and superimpose the product right into your house. And then you have the third, which is the VR stuff. You put on the headset, you can experience it more like in a 3D world. And then the last but not least is like the voice chat, video chat, or messaging, right? So we're using that a lot because that virtual experience, all of this are all virtual experience, by the way. We're trying to really build an experience that we can build momentum and process around, right? So for example, chat allows us to go a very upper funnel to basically, grab the volume, right? And then being able to kind of distribute the volume. We don't have 1,000 call agents to take phone calls when the call volume is that big, right? But then it creates a very negative customer experience when everybody all comes at the same time because the sales happening right now. And so a lot of it is really, how do we facilitate those volumes into channels, appropriate channels that people want to be going onto, and then they're comfortable conversing and continuing on their path, right? Otherwise, we're kind of fitting everybody into the same runway, and we say, hey, you kind of have to run this way in order to file for this, right? So that's kind of like we're trying to create different lanes for customers. Hopefully that makes sense.
You in previous conversations, you've referred to this. It's an interesting term. I'd like you to sort of unpack it a little bit. Conversation commerce. Tell me what that concept means to you, and how does it apply beyond just the chatbots?
So when we talk about conversation commerce, it's essentially, I think we have some slides here. Yeah, here you go. Right. So chatbots, right? So we talk about people value advice and assist across some. So it's very simple, right? When you wanted to buy something, when you want to interested in finding out something, you want information. So, but the thing about it is that the source of information is also very important. How that information gets delivered is also very important. And when that information, so all of this we can control within the chatbot setup. We can say, follow up with somebody's chat 2 days later, right? It's the same thing as an email drip search that goes out and sends everybody 5 emails in 10 days. So it's the same idea, but the idea is that the chatbot allows you to have that texting conversation, kind of like a relationship with somebody, where you can see like the kind of the persistent chat, right? So you're always getting back into a chat. You're not starting a new chat. So it feels like, oh yeah, I was talking to Steve about this just about 2 months ago or a month ago, right? And I had this issue, and I was talking about this. Even if you come back and buy something, you can see that there's just more trust, the reliance on the fact that I've done this before. And so part of it is to leverage those type of mechanisms as well, right? And that's part of the reason why, a Facebook or Meta now is still continuing to be great in terms of user engagement, because people trust the platform. They might not like what it's doing, but the platform, technical wise, people understand what they can get out of it.
Mm-hmm. So there's this kind of continuity in their relationship with the retailer. You're using a variety of tools to make it feel as if they're picking up where they left off, and
yes.
that whoever they're talking to, whether it's automated or real, there's some cognizance of what the previous set of exchanges were.
Yes, and it's kind of like I always explain to you. It's kind of like when you watch like a History Channel, Discovery Channel, and it goes into commercial and it comes back. It'll say previously, right, the Lions were doing this, and you don't feel so bad missing out. So you're having that continuous conversation relationship with somebody through this mechanism is very good. And the thing about it is very modular. You can have that conversation anytime, anywhere, in any section of the journey. So in the middle of it, I come in and I say, you know what? What is your hour operation, right? Oh, what is your return policy? I know they can go online. They can look at it. They can click a few things. They can wait for the web page to load, or they can just ask somebody through a chat, right? And those are the same thing as what I'm trying to explain about conversation commerce, is that conversation commerce is essentially you're taking the website or what you want to communicate, and you break them down into a kind of a decision tree, so that at the end you help and you facilitate that person. And there's a lot of times you can facilitate them the right way, and they're not going to buy your product. You just have to understand that, and that's very important too, because then you can say, okay, I got to come back and maybe develop a product that works for these customers, and maybe that's why they don't buy this other product that I have. So collecting that information is rather important.
This slide shows some of that flow, right?
Yeah, to show some of that flow, and then it allows you to attach it to users, to devices, right, to geo, so you can kind of really break down the data in much different ways and say, oh, people in the Midwest behave this way. We should probably tweak our chatbot more like this. Whereas from a human being perspective, it's kind of challenging to try to fit your agents towards geographically how people are as well. So there's different things you can do to really tailor that personal experience. And we felt like, even making humor, having jokes, these are all things you can test. All right, and then going on to kind of last, talking about the flow chart, the kind of the decision tree, right? This is another example, and we just felt like, chatbot and the way that chat works is no different than our email. And in fact, we felt like messaging and chat have overtaken email. I think email is good, but people are using it now more of a receipt. Like I just want to prove that ordering confirmation and this and that. But when I have problems, they go to social or they go into chat. And the other thing also is that when we talk about volume, right? When we talk about capturing people's email, converting people, the higher the funnel, the volume they are, when you start chatting with people, the more sticky your mechanism is, because most of the marketing vehicles that most brands and businesses use, they are not interactive. They're just one way, right? You go to this website, you sign up for this, right? You go to this website, you keep clicking on this. But what if you ask someone to do something and there's a feedback and they can keep going right there and then. And that's part of the great thing about having a chatbot at the upper funnel is you continue to bring more volume into the middle and the lower funnel, right? That are more qualified. And so the idea is that, you get to refine the chatbot volume, people that want to use chat to purchase, but you also get to optimize that journey for those purposes and to be able to kind of remove a lot of inefficiencies. Because a lot of times, a lot of people are still not interested in buying through chat. So those are the things that you have to be kind of very realistic about.
I'm glad you mentioned optimization, because my next question has to do with, as you're engaging people and getting them into this funnel and these conversations, what are the KPIs or the metrics you're looking at? Because you're not necessarily, looking all the way down to the very bottom in the sale. What are some of the metrics that are telling you you're on the right track and you're engaging them the right way?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things, I'll show you guys some example, right? So this is an example of our guided software shopping, where you click on the ad on the very left screen you see, and then you see the chat shows up. And then the blue is the selection by the customer, right? And essentially, this is a multiple choice question done through a chat setup with images and videos, and it looks very, very rich, a very rich experience. And so the way that we do this is, okay, once you understand this, is this a good experience to keep people through the entire experience, right? So retention is important, right? And then also, what do they do afterwards? So some of the information that I can share with you guys that we have collected, things like the styles, right? We have different options, so you can see here's the styles, and you can go down and say, okay, what happened to the customers who selected those styles? Have they purchased product in actually those styles, right? So those are the type of things that we have to understand as well, because sometimes it doesn't work like that. Right? We want to think it's linear, but it's not. And the same thing goes to the quizzes. So when we do these quizzes, the questions that I just explained to you, these are real results that we got from last year when we were running it in the beginning. We saw a 73% completion rate, 79% completion rate, and 66. So the completion rate, meaning how many people completed the entire chat. So you can see 70–80% of the people completed some of these quizzes, right? If 100 people started the chat, 70 or 80 people will finish the entire chat, right? And then the bottom number shows the click rate. So click after you chat with us, did you click to our website? So again, 70%, right? 70%, 80% of people are clicking through it. So yes, there's some attrition, but the attrition is nothing like email marketing, right? It's very, very different. And at the same time, this is persistent. People can come back, right? And there's some great numbers that we're seeing in terms of being able to keep their engagement. And then when you move users that are highly engaged, they're obviously more qualified when they landed on the website. And we follow through those engagement, we can see, oh, these users obviously are serious about buying furniture. And that's one of the reasons why these chatbots have shown that, there are some quizzes that will help support, kind of the reasons about, keep doing chatbots, but then we have to learn from which capacity that's going to happen. So you can see right here, there's like style quiz there's a shop the room in color, and there's inspiration. There are three completely different approaches to how users are going to be. And it allows us to do personas, allows us to build a kind of different entry points. So going back to allow us to say, okay, somebody that comes in from Facebook ads and then sign up for our email and then come back to chat, what are the most likely activities and things that they're going to do after that? So our data team and our kind of an entire team that's looking at this experience, we focus on trying to deliver learnings out of all this, not just like looking at the conversion, but we know the conversion are going to happen, but it's really about how that really pertains to what we're doing. and how do we go to the area that has more opportunities and more incremental growth for us. So hopefully, kind of again, all of this makes sense, from a chatbot perspective. And then from a kind of the click rate and going back to the website, people can actually once they click through to the website, to our website, they can actually come back to the chat, and the chat will still be there. And then also, if you're the first time to chat with us, after 24 hours, there's actually an automatic organic chat follow-up that will alert the user through a kind of a mobile alert as well. So we're really getting a lot of value out of all this engagement that we simply just don't have resources to be able to do that.
Well, you're also building towards, which I know we're gonna get to, but it seems like what you're doing with the customer experience is not just engaging, but you're actually sort of changing the terms of the experience. You're moving towards a more consultative role, where you're having all of these different interactions with people at all these different stages. You're offering a lot of information, but also starting to offer advice. So you're really changing the nature of the relationship. It's no longer just pushing people through the funnel, giving them, but actually sort of getting them to start thinking about you as the retailer, as a consultant and an advisor, not just a seller. And and that maybe that's a subtle difference, but it seems to me that it leads into that next set of services that you guys are building, which are consultative and advisory.
Right. So I think, Steve, you're talking about kind of like the 3D stuff that rendering stuff that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that right now. I think that's a good point, because ultimately, here's the thing. We offer free design services. We have our own in-house designer that are real designers, right? That we pay them, they're our employees and everything. But we don't have 100 of them, and we have hundreds of customers all the time. So it's very hard to cater to every single customer who wants free design services from us. So part of the thing about it, we also learned through a lot of surveys is that, some people like to design, some people don't like to design. Some people like to see people design for them, right? And some people like to see choices and they don't want to do any of the work. So there's different ways to do that. And so we offer one way of free design services. So again, the thinking is, how do we scale that, right? So if we can capture more people who are willing to use digital tools, right, like a chatbot, they probably will be more willing to use additional digital tools to enhance their purchase experience. And so that's why we developed 3D Space Planner and Room Refresh tools. If you look at those tools, they're not like supposed to be ultra groundbreaking, super realistic. They're really supposed to get you closer to have a good idea of what you're buying, right? Of making decisions. And so, you can see these two tools. They're actually two completely different tools, right? And one tool on the left side, the 3D Space Planning, it utilizes a 3D software. You can design your exact home and you can put in the exact products you want. Obviously, it's time consuming. It's not easy to operate the system, but if you have done like Photoshop, photo editing, it's not difficult. A lot of people would know how to do it. It's just that you kind of have to want to do it, enjoy doing it, and all that stuff. Whereas the other one, right, the Room Refresh, everything is already kind of there. You click on the chairs, it just swap out the chairs right there for you. So you can take a quick look of how that looks like. It's almost like a mood board, but a little bit better than just like, pictures on a white background. Does that make sense? So we try to utilize these tools. Not that we think they're the best tool, but it's like, it's just enough that should be able to get somebody to go from point A to point B. Let's see what happens, right? And then that's kind of like the thinking we have. And then being able to set also, taking that from an ad, right, with Pinterest, so we work with Pinterest, and we said, okay, what if somebody clicks on that and it goes into this 3D room thing? They can design that creative that they have, right? And the idea is not, we believe that, people are going to just add to cart and buy that sofa, but it's really about getting almost to a gamification, right? Where you really, gaming, it's about delivering that experience to somebody. So I don't see any difference in delivering experience in a digital world than gaming, right? But we're not doing enough, right? Because there's not a lot of sounds, or the screen could be all small, it's on a phone. But the idea is that the more you get to a simulation situation where somebody can really get a good feel of your product and your brand, right, and your services, that is what's more important. Because a lot of times, even if you give someone a swatch, like we send our customer our swatch fabric, they tell us that this is great, but it's like so tiny. Like I want to see like a big piece of it so I can kind of really see it. We understand that, but it's going to cost somebody a lot of money to do that. So part of it is to say, okay, well, why don't you use the AR tool? People do that, right? But again, AR tool often are on a little tiny phone. They don't feel good looking at a huge thing on a tiny phone. So everything that we do is to focus on how do we get more feedback out of it so that we can make a case and say, maybe we're going to develop more tools or better experiences or more stores, right? But by the way, all those are actually in the works. So these are the learnings that we got out of developing all these different user experience. And ultimately also, we work with Mark Sen, which is our 3D partner for the 3D Pinterest ads. We even add in stuff like cats and pets and dogs and stuff like that, just so people would feel like it's like a real game, right? Because I got a real dog. Why don't I have a dog in the game? And my dog's name is Joe, and Joe should be in the game. So part of it is also being able to understand, does that change? Do users come back the next day or the day after when we send them email and say, please come back and complete your room and add to cart, right? And there are things like that we can do as well. But we're still in the very kind of early learning stage. We're also still trying to understand, like, who are these tools more pertain to, right? And how are some of the ways that we can bridge the gap between what the tools can do versus what we can improvise from a reality and physical world perspective.
What can, maybe we can wrap by sharing some of those early learnings about what you are learning from these things. For instance, how are you calculating or thinking about the ROI from all this? This is not a small investment. Yes, it's, as you said, sending everybody AR headsets would be a lot more expensive, but this alone is a significant investment of time and effort. And it's a long game. This is a long buy cycle, fairly expensive items. So how are you calculating the level of investment to make here? And then at the other end, I want to get to what metrics you're already seeing.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit more. Joybird, the way we operate, we're a pretty innovative bunch. And the way that we operate is we don't have a traditional way of just getting the ROI. We think about ways that we can get incremental gains to be able to pay for things like this. And so this is one of the reasons. So I'll give you an example. If we propose and say this costs us, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're going to do all this, and it's going to cost us money, and it turns out to be great, and it's working great, and it's going to pay for itself, right? And we just happen to have a lot of those that actually worked out, and they are part of our seamless experience. Like, you go to our website, everything you see on our website now versus when I first came here is completely different. That's because we did all of that, what I just said. And so part of this is the exact same thing as what we're doing. We don't think that we're right. We just want to put out so that we can get feedback, right? At the end of the day. And so the way that we measure return on investment, a lot of it, obviously there's direct return on investment, right? And there's also investments that we take from like innovation and test funds that we also have by building out, credibility with our teams, right? Because a lot of times, a lot of the things we're doing, not a lot of competitors are doing, right? And it can't be scary to spend some money like that on it. But at the same time, for us, because we have extremely high average order value, we're very loyal customers, right? It affords us to do that. And that's part of the thing that I would say is that we think about innovating these things so that it can pay for itself. If it doesn't, the team will drop it, right? We don't get like fantasized about, oh my God, the customer must be wrong, right? It's never that. It's really like, okay, maybe they're not ready, right? And that's, I can share some of that that's what we're learning is that, for example, when you have a nice tool like this, very few people will use it, right? But the people that will use it, that are power users, they will use like 40 minutes of it. The first time they will use 40 minutes, right? Like who uses 40 minutes, to do stuff? So the point is that, but you don't get that many people with that. But the great thing about it is that somebody that did that, not only they will buy from us, they buy a lot more from us, but they advocated this experience, right? To others who like that experience. Well, I can do this in my spare time. I literally put it all together and they ship me the entire thing that I want. But again, nobody is going to do that all the time, right? So it's just, and so part of it is to understand, okay, we found that there is a path to conversion for this type of customer, this type of persona. Is it going to be sustainable for us, right? And the way we think about sustainable thing too is to not think about profitability at the customer level. We think about sustainable, meaning like the customers that we acquire that work with us, are they going to align with all the values that we have going forward? And those values in turn, right, translates into some of the experience that we're going to continue to deliver. And that's part of the reason why.
Is
you know,
that
people
also
write with us.
giving you what we have to go, but that sort of leads into one good end question. Does that then, you mentioned the personas that do these deep dives with your planner tools and how valuable they are. What are they telling you in terms of customer acquisition? Are they helping you identify who those most likely people are so you can go out and more efficiently find them?
Yeah, there's that, right? There's also ways to grow your business. Like you need to build new brands, sub markets, go after teens or babies, office furniture, different categories. You understand what I'm saying? So then it allows us to refine that, because then maybe the customers on Joybird don't need all this, but then you know, Joybird has other brands, you know, La-Z-Boy have other brands that could use this, right? And these are the type of learnings that's going to be very valuable, right? Because then you really understand that in reality too, is that you can target those personas and those audience now. Whereas in the past, we're just doing kind of a casting wide net. Even if you say you're doing a lookalike and all that stuff, you're not going to be able to capture the bulk of it because your budget don't cast that wide, you know?
Eric, Tsai, as always, it is great to have you. This is fascinating stuff. I would urge people to go out and try this planner tool because it's just a fascinating way of rethinking the retail experience. Eric, as always, thanks so much.
Thank you.